Welcome to Bedtime Life Stories, your cozy corner where ordinary lives become extraordinary journeys, gently guiding you toward sleep. Settle into your favorite spot, dim the lights, and let your breathing slow. Tonight's tale is a mysterious journey from the edges of fear to the heart of hope. It's crafted for teens and adults alike, soothing yet gripping, a story to carry you peacefully into the night. The Night the Hospital. Forgot My Name. Chapter 1. The Bracelet That Didn't Fit. My name didn't fit on the bracelet. That was my first thought when the nurse snapped the white band around my wrist. The letters felt too crowded, like they had been squeezed into a smaller life than mine. "You're all set," she said, smiling with tired eyes. "We'll take good care of you." Outside the tall windows, the evening unrolled like a velvet ribbon, blue and endless. Inside, the air held that clean, careful scent of a place where bad things are supposed to be fixed. I tried to slow my breathing, but fear kept tapping on the inside of my ribs. A routine procedure, they said, in and out. Still, the words routine and heart don't want to share a sentence. My room was quiet, a little too quiet. The bed hummed gently when I pressed the button. A clock ticked somewhere, steady as a footstep. I watched the second hand finish a circle, then another, thinking about the stranger I felt like. An ordinary person stepping into an extraordinary tunnel with no map. A new nurse came in, carrying a tablet. "Name and date of birth?" she asked, and I told her. She nodded, but her brows knit for a moment before she smoothed them down again. "All good," she said. "Someone will come get you in a little while." But the minutes stretched, thin and translucent, like sugar pulled into glass. A soft whispering threaded the hallway. Wheels, slippers, distant murmurs. From my pocket, I slid out my phone and saw a message from my sister. "You got this. I'm awake if you need me." I started to reply, then hesitated, the words sticking. I didn't want my fear to grow bigger with every letter I told it. When I looked down, the bracelet had rotated. Now the barcode faced up, a neat little ladder, and my name hid underneath, a shadowed guess. I pressed the edges and felt the faint press of the letters. It struck me suddenly that the bracelet knew more about what would happen to me tonight than I did. The lights dimmed without warning, shifting the room to the soft, early dream color of evening. My heart clicked into a careful rhythm. In the hallway, a cart squeaked closer, then stopped. Someone spoke my last name, not my first, just the final syllables, like they'd been smudged along the way. I started to sit up. Another voice. "No, that's the other one." The other one. The floor seemed to tilt by half a degree, not enough to make me fall, just enough to make falling feel possible. I looked again at the bracelet. Was that a typo in the ID number? Or had my eyes invented it, the way fear invents shadows, from coats and chairs? When the curtain moved, it was slow and soft, and an older nurse leaned in with the kind of face that had seen 1,000 midnight worries. "How are we doing?" she asked. "Trying to be brave," I said. "That's all anyone can do," she replied. "We'll be by soon to prep." She glanced at the bracelet, then at her tablet. Her mouth opened a little, then closed. "I'll be right back," she said, and left, before I could ask why. For a long moment, the room was a snow globe, quiet, enclosed, glittering with possibilities. I pressed my palm over the bracelet, as if to hold my name in place. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed. Somewhere else, someone cried. I breathed in, breathed out, and watched the second hand complete another small circle of my life. And I thought, tonight is a night I must survive, whether or not my name fits. Chapter 2. The ward that sleeps with one eye open. Hospitals don't sleep. They drowse, they lean back, they hum under their breath, but they never fully close their eyes. At night, the lights lower to a hush, and the machines whisper to each other in code. Footsteps grow gentler. Doors breathe instead of slam. But the work goes on, a river beneath the ice. I discovered this in small ways. A shadow passed my doorway, paused, then slid on. A pair of voices compared holidays in the break room. Somewhere a lullaby played on a phone for a child who couldn't sleep, and the melody sneaked into the hallway like a brave little kite. And then there was the chart. It arrived with a young doctor whose face looked too alert for midnight. He smiled. "Hi, I'm Dr. Wynne. Just reviewing a few details." He held the chart carefully in one hand and a pen in the other. He asked for my name and birthday again, and I gave them, practicing a steady voice. He checked the bracelet, then the chart. His eyes flicked, once, toward a line that made his mouth tighten. "I'll be right back," he said politely, and retreated. Right back turned into 12.5 minutes. I counted them. I counted the breaths in between and the distant elevator chime and the way the air shifted as if a door at the end of a corridor had opened, then closed. I watched the window darken to ink. When Dr. Wynne returned, he wore that gentle, careful tone people put on when they're carrying a glass bowl across a crowded room. "Looks like we had a small mix-up," he said. "Your chart was cross-filed with another patient's prep notes. It's been fixed. No worries." The words "no worries" are often a sign that worries are exactly what you should feel. But he spoke steadily, and his hands didn't tremble, and I decided to believe him enough to slow my heart back to a manageable pace. "Routine procedure," he said, and he described it again. The steps I already knew. The prep, the anesthesia, the careful instruments, the precise hands. "You'll be home very soon." He left, and the bracelet scratched softly against my wrist. I turned it and tried to tuck my name beneath my pulse, as if my body could memorize it better than the paper could. A different nurse came in. Not the tired-eyed one or the older one who had promised to be right back. This one was tall, with a black braid and a soft way of placing things on the counter, like setting them down gently could protect you from whatever they were meant to measure. She checked the monitors, then her tablet. Her brow drew together slightly. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just making sure we're all aligned," she said. She hesitated, then added, "Hospitals. They're good at healing, and notoriously bad at remembering people are not files." She looked at me, really looked. "But we are not files. We're here. We talk. We ask. That's how we make sure it's right." I nodded, grateful. "Could you double-check my name?" I asked, and we both smiled like that was a little silly and not silly at all. She did. Then she adjusted my blanket, her hand hovering in the air, like a little sail, catching the draft. "Try to rest," she said. "You'll meet the anesthesiologist soon." Alone again, I tried to think of something else, of the kitchen in the morning and the messy fruit bowl, of my sister's cat and his dignified disapproval of everyone, of the way the sun touches a road after rain and turns it silver. I wanted sleep to take me, Not the deep medical kind that arrives with a mask and a promise, but the ordinary kind, the one that finds you in your own bed and forgives you your alarms. I did not sleep, but I drifted close enough to see the beginning of a dream, a hallway that looped back on itself like a bracelet, and at the end, a nurse folding a sheet into a perfect square. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't alone. A woman stood by the foot of my bed, not wearing a nurse's uniform. She held a small plastic bag and my chart, and she smiled with a softness that felt like the first warm day in spring. "Hi," she whispered. "I'm June. I handle pre-op logistics." "Hi," I said, because words were the only ladder out of the moment's strangeness. She checked the bracelet. She checked the chart. Then she checked my face the way a good librarian checks the spine of a book before placing it on the shelf. "We're just going to fix one tiny thing," she said. "Your middle initial." She clicked a pen and wrote the letter carefully, like a promise. When she left, the room felt a fraction sturdier. I closed my eyes again and hummed a bit of someone else's lullaby, which is why I almost didn't hear the whisper behind the curtain. It's the wrong one. Chapter 3. An unlabeled door. There is a particular quiet that follows the sentence, "It's the wrong one," like snow settling after a branch breaks. It isn't loud, and it isn't empty either. It's a waiting kind of quiet, as if the air has set down its coffee and leaned forward. I waited, breath shallow. The voices were close, just beyond the curtain. One older, one young. Papers rustled. A barcode scanner chirped, impatient. The older voice sighed. "Double check." "I did," said the younger. "Twice." I considered what to do. I could pull the curtain back and step into whatever conversation was happening. I could press the call button and request some official glow-in-the-dark reassurance. Or I could stay still, as if stillness would make the world decide in my favor. Before I could choose, the curtain stirred, and the older nurse, herself again, the one whose face had held 1,000 midnights, appeared. "You're awake," she said. Her mouth tried to smile. "I'm so glad." "What's wrong?" I asked, because it felt braver to say it aloud than to let it stalk around my thoughts. "Nothing wrong," she said instinctively. Then she softened. "We had a labeling confusion down the hall. Not you. We're cleaning it up." She touched the rail, a movement so practiced it looked like a prayer. "Have you met the anesthesiologist yet?" "Not yet. Soon." She left the curtain half open. Through the gap, I saw the hallway like a lazy river, everything moving gently in one direction. A sign farther down flickered for a moment, the kind of flicker that means whoever changed the bulb will be called back in 3 weeks to change it again. Beneath the sign was a door I hadn't noticed before, painted the color of paper. It had no label, no small metal rectangle telling you staff only or storage or supplies. Just a door, in a place where everything is supposed to be named. I felt drawn to it, which was absurd. I wasn't going anywhere. My job was to lie down and let the complicated kindnesses of science do what they do. But the door stayed with me, the idea of it anyway, the way a puzzle piece stays in your pocket after you've given up on the puzzle. The anesthesiologist arrived at last, with eyes that had learned long ago to read sleep. He introduced himself as Dr. Chow, and he had a quiet humor about him, the kind that steadies a person in small ways. He explained the process, the mask, the drifting, the gentle guardrails he would put up around my body so that when I came back, everything important would still be mine. "Any questions?" he asked.
Just one, I said, surprising myself. How do you remember everyone? All of us? These names, these faces, these barcodes? He smiled. I don't remember barcodes, he said. I remember noses, and the way people's voices tremble at the edges when they're joking. I remember how someone touches their own elbow when they're afraid, like they're making sure they're still attached to themselves. He looked at my arm, where my fingers had, without my permission, settled. I remember that. His answer was a blanket in a room that was a little too cold. I tucked it around my mind. He left, promising to see me soon.
The older nurse returned, pushing a soft rolling cart with calm precision. Time to prep, she said gently. They raised the bed to a comfortable height. They spoke to each other in short, friendly codes. They asked me to count a little, to breathe a little, to relax a lot. And for a moment I did. I let go of the door. I let go of the name on my bracelet. I let go of the way the hallway sounded like a river and the way the clock measured courage in thin little slices. Then the cart hit a bump. A small thing, a ripple in the floor. A folder slid. A page turned. Wait, someone said. Not me. Stop, said the older nurse. And the room, obedient, stopped. She picked up the page with the care you give a thin, important letter. Her eyes moved twice across a line. The line moved under her eyes. She looked at me, the way someone looks at a window, just before they open it. Say your full name, she said. Quiet. Clear. I said it. The whole thing. The initial June had corrected. The vowels that never fit quite right together. The little family story and the last name that our grandfather had made up and we'd decided to keep. Again, she said. I said it again. She nodded. Okay, she said to the room. We're correct. The air loosened. The clock resumed its polite stepping. But as they moved the cart again, my eyes slid to the doorway. And there it was, the unlabeled door at the hall's end, just before someone walked in front of it, carrying a bundle of linens like a sleeping cloud. I decided then what I would do if anyone asked me a third time to say my name. I would say it, yes, but I would also ask for theirs. I would write it, if they let me, on the margin of the page that told my story. I would make a chain of names linking me to the people who touched the rails of my bed, who wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm, who had learned the language of machines that breathe, because I was not a file dragged from one folder to another. I was a person who would walk out of this room, and I needed someone else to say that with me. Chapter 4. The Mask That Whispered. They wheeled me toward the elevator, through a corridor of soft lights and softer voices. As we moved, I watched the ceiling tiles slide past, counting them like quiet stars. The anesthesiologist walked beside my bed, voice low, question simple. The older nurse at the helm hummed a tune I couldn't place. The cart ahead of us swayed slightly, like it had learned to dance to the rhythm of midnight. The elevator smelled faintly of lemon and something colder, like clean metal. The doors closed. For a moment, I saw us reflected. Me with my careful breaths, the nurse with her tune, Dr. Chow with his hands gently folded, as if holding a thought he didn't want to spill. The doors opened onto pre-op, which was like a waiting room for the body's bravest choices. A curtain enclosed a space. A warm blanket appeared by magic. The nurse adjusted my pillow and the heart monitor, and its beep tucked itself into the room's hush. Here comes a little oxygen, Dr. Chow said, and the mask lowered, smelling of plastic and a faint sweetness that reminded me of late summers. You'll feel light. You might hear us far away. You're safe. Safe. Such a small word. Such a large request. I tried to trust it. I watched the monitor's green line draw a tidy hill from my heart to the screen and back again, as if mapping my fear into something legible. The mask was soft around the edges. My mind loosened its grip on the corners of the world. And then the mask whispered. Not with words exactly, with a sound. A soft, sibilant leak near my left cheek, as if the mask and the oxygen had become a couple having a quiet disagreement. It made the hairs on my arm lift. I turned my head a degree. The whisper changed pitch. "Do you hear that?" I asked. My voice came out round and smaller than I intended. The nurse leaned in. "A little leak," she said. "Let me adjust." She pressed, smoothed, took a little piece of translucent tape and persuaded the edge to behave. The whisper softened, then stilled. I closed my eyes, opened them, closed them again. The green hill on the monitor became a mountain range in my mind, then a low meadow, and then, as the medicine's first soft hand touched my thoughts, a shoreline where the tide rolled in and out without a sound. "Tell me something true," I said to nobody in particular. It felt important to ask for it, to ask the room to promise me something solid before I drifted. Dr. Chow's voice arrived like a steady oar. "Something true," he said. "The heart is an instrument, and sometimes it plays two songs at once, one you can hear and one you only feel. Tonight, we are here to help them become one song." I smiled or dreamed that I did. The mask breathed for me, with me. The nurse touched my wrist, a small moonrise of a touch, and the room dimmed slightly, as if the world had pulled a sheet over itself to keep the light gentle. "Count backwards?" someone suggested kindly. I started, missing numbers on purpose to prove I still could. The mask whispered again, a tiny susurration, more memory than sound, and the unlabeled door entered my mind as if I'd packed it for the trip. I imagined it opening to a room where every lost thing was kept. One of my mother's earrings, the little photograph that slipped behind a bookshelf, the version of me who didn't worry, the names that get smudged on bracelets. The medicine deepened. The shoreline widened. A gull cried across it. A wave tucked under itself like a thought. I felt very close to the place in sleep where everyone is honest. And then, small as a moth's wing, the feeling that something had stepped into the room that wasn't there before. I tried to lift my head. The nurse's hand was there, a soft boundary. "Easy," she said. A man's voice, somewhere I couldn't place. "Is this the older nurse?" "Shh. We're in." The monitor hummed. The mask whispered, and then it didn't. My eyelids signed their paperwork. The oars dipped in the water, pull, glide, pull, and the boat carried me away from the dock. As I went, I thought of the door again. I thought, if I find it in my dreams, I'll label it. I'll write its name in big, generous letters, so nobody ever forgets it again. Then the room disappeared into a soft, trustworthy dark. Chapter 5. A room of mistakes. When I woke, it wasn't because the world was loud. It was because a silence had that particular shape, the shape of people standing very still. My mouth was cotton. My thoughts were feathers. The ceiling above me was a smooth map I didn't know how to read. I struggled up through the pleasant syrup of anesthesia into the first clear notes of pain and memory. A voice. "You're waking up. That's good." I blinked. The recovery room? Curtains like folded clouds? A different monitor, this one quieter,
as if it too was recovering from something. The older nurse appeared beside me, eyes steady. "You did well," she said. "Is it finished?" I asked, words stumbling over the edge of my tongue. "It is," she said. "You're okay?" The relief arrived carefully, as if it had to be carried. It set itself on my chest and warmed me from the inside. I closed my eyes and felt the flood recede, leaving small shells of gratitude behind. But then the room shifted. Not physically, but the way a dream shifts when you realize you're dreaming. A pair of voices, at a distance, a name that wasn't mine, the sound of paper being turned with more force than paper deserves. "Excuse me," the older nurse said softly, and left. I lay very still, aware now of the delicate choreography around me, the way a body is moved without waking, the way a needle is introduced with a phrase like a lullaby. I thought of the door again, and suddenly I knew where I had seen another like it. At my old school, down a hallway that belonged to teachers.
There had been an unlabeled door there, too, chipped at the bottom. Inside were ordinary things, mops and ladders and one ancient fan, but it had felt like a threshold. The curtain rustled, and the nurse returned, face wearing that same careful expression of someone carrying glass bowls. "All is well," she said. "We had a paperwork discrepancy in another case. It's resolved." She adjusted my blanket, then patted my shoulder, the kind of pat that says both, "It's okay," and "I'm here truly." I wanted to ask about the whisper I thought I heard before sleep. I wanted to ask about the man's voice, but my mouth had decided it had done enough for one morning. Later, after the first measured sips of water, after the check of vitals, after the brief, blessed visit from Dr. Chow, who told me that my heart had behaved like a very brave instrument, June appeared, the logistics librarian, with spring in her eyes. She carried a clipboard and a smile that had learned something new overnight. "We had a small adventure with your records," she said, quietly, honestly. "The system tried to give you someone else's middle name again. We caught it. We fixed it. We're tightening the process so it won't happen to you or anyone again." I nodded, too tired to be properly indignant, too grateful to be properly frightened. "Thank you," I said, and meant it in the way you mean it to someone who puts your name back in your own mouth. As the afternoon softened toward a warmer kind of light, the room filled with small human things, someone's joke, someone's yawn, the squeak of a shoe that needed attention. I felt the ordinary return, the cozy drape of it, the way you can sit inside a day and feel it hold you like a sweater. But the mystery remained, like a page that had been folded once and then pressed flat again, the crease still visible, the unlabeled door, the whisper, the wrong one. Even in my fog, a little part of me kept watch, not for danger, but for meaning, the way you keep an eye on a kettle and wait for the exact moment it sings. Near evening, as the sky took on that worn coin color, the older nurse came to discharge me from the recovery area. She moved my chart from one shelf to another. She checked my bracelet. She checked me. "You're the one who said, 'Wait,'" I whispered. My voice surprised me. It had found its footing. She looked at me for a long second. "Yes," she said. "Sometimes the smallest wait is the difference between almost and always." "Was it bad?" I asked. "It was almost," she said. Then gently, "But it wasn't." She didn't say more. She didn't need to. The mystery wasn't a murder mystery. It wasn't a chase. It was a story about the way a system can forget that a person is not a barcode, and the way people inside that system remember. It was about the door that leads to the room where mistakes are kept, and how to open it, and go inside, and turn on the light. As they wheeled me back toward my room, we passed the end of the hallway. The sign flickered. The bulb promised to misbehave again soon. And there was the door, the unlabeled one. It was ajar. Inside I saw shelves, boxes, a coil of plastic tubing, and a label maker perched like a patient bird. The older nurse followed my gaze. "We're labeling everything," she said, half to me, half to herself. Then she added with a small smile, "Even the unlabeled doors." Chapter 6. The Wanderer's Walk. The first time I stood up, the floor felt closer to me than usual. My legs did their best. I concentrated on being taller than the fear, and I was, if only by a few inches. They brought me a cup of tea that tasted like comfort, and a small, miraculous slice of toast. I half sat, half floated. The hours sauntered by, pretending not to be hours at all. Nurses slipped in and out, each a different kind of kindness.
June appeared once more, with an updated bracelet and a form to sign that felt less like a contract and more like a handshake with the universe. Near dusk, I asked if I could walk a bit. "Just to the end of the hall," the older nurse said, "and back." She steadied me with a hand that knew how to do such things. "No trying to solve any mysteries." "I won't," I promised, which is the kind of promise you make knowing you'll keep it until you don't. The hallway was quieter now. The river narrowed. A television murmured a news show no one was really watching. The flickering sign blinked, doggedly performing hope. At the very end, the door had been labeled. A small metal plate had been screwed on, quick and neat. Utility. I laughed softly. The sound surprised me, light, relieved. "Utility," I said, tasting the word. "It's amazing what a name can do," the nurse said. We reached the door. I didn't try the handle. I didn't need to. The mystery had been less about what was behind it, and more about the fact that it had no name at all. The world steadies when things are called what they are. On the way back, we passed a family clustered around a bed, their faces a garden of relief. "He's okay," someone whispered, like a spell. Down the hall, a teenager with a hoodie and a brave face watched a nurse change a dressing, nodding as if committing every move to memory for later bragging rights. Near my door, a technician adjusted a monitor with the affection of a mechanic tuning a favorite old car. I saw all of it and felt part of it. The Wanderer's Walk had given me back the map of where I was. I belonged to the ordinary again. Back in my room, I sat carefully and looked at the bracelet one more time. The letters fit now. Not because they had changed, but because I had returned to myself enough to wear them properly. The older nurse adjusted my blanket, then stood, looking at me like a lighthouse looks at a ship that has found its way into harbor.
"You'll probably go home tomorrow," she said. "Thank you," I said, and it spilled out of me, larger than it was supposed to be. "For all the small things that were not small." She nodded. "Most rescues are made of little things," she said. "You did your part." "My part?" "You asked. You listened. You said your name and you watched for it when we said it back." She was right. Survival, I realized, is a duet. You play your part and you let others play theirs. And between you, a song emerges that pulls you through. Night came kindly. The window held a handful of city lights that looked like thought bubbles rising from rooftops. I texted my sister, "I'm okay." She sent a cascade of hearts and a photo of the cat looking unimpressed by my bravery. I laughed again, softer this time, closer to sleep. Before I drifted, I thought of something Dr. Chow had said. The heart. Two songs becoming one. I pressed my palm to my chest and for the first time in a long time, listened without bracing. There it was. One song. Mine. Chapter 7. The exit and the echo morning came with the smell of coffee traveling bravely down the hall and the soft clap of shoes that were about to do a lot of good. A new day, a tidier sky, a promise at the end of my bed like a folded sweater. Home. Dr. Wynne visited, courteous as ever, and told me what I needed to know in a voice designed not to startle me. Dr. Chow followed, eyes kind, and when I thanked him, he nodded in that understated way people do when they've taken you to a very deep place and safely back again. June arrived with the discharge papers, this time immaculate, like a sentence diagrammed by someone who loves grammar. She placed a pen on the clipboard and waited while I read. At the bottom was my name, correctly spelled, correctly lived in. I signed. The older nurse, my midnight lighthouse, walked me halfway to the elevator. "You'll be fine," she said, like a blessing. At the corner, we paused. The utility door, newly christened, stood polite and ordinary. I touched the cool metal plate lightly, as if to thank it for revealing what had been invisible. "Why was it unlabeled?" I asked, not accusing. Just curious, the way you ask a friend why they took the long way home. She shrugged. People get busy. Things get missed. The world is made of details that want to escape. She looked at me, her gaze clear, and of people who notice and call them back. I liked that. It felt like a job description I could carry outside with me, to notice, to call things back to their names. The elevator sighed open. I stepped inside, and as the doors began to close, I looked out at the hall and felt a flicker of something else. Recognition. I had been the ordinary person whose life had wandered to the edge of a strange map and back. The mystery had not been a ghost in the walls, not a code whispered in the vents. It had been an ordinary error wearing a darker coat. And the survival had been made of hands and eyes, and the brief, brave word, wait. On the ride down, the elevator hummed, and I imagined all the people who rode it each day, frightened, relieved, healed, healing. I imagined their bracelets, their names, their hearts practicing their one song. I pictured the label maker upstairs, finally at work, giving names to the shy doors, the slippery shelves, the boxes that pretend they don't need introductions. Outside, the day was crisp, and the sky had been carefully folded into a deep, sincere blue. My sister pulled up, and when I opened the car door, the cat in his carrier regarded me with skepticism. Then, after a moment, grace. At home, I slept in my own bed, the ordinary kind of sleep that doesn't need a mask to begin. I woke to the small sounds of a kitchen that loves you. I poured tea. I stood by the window. My chest felt both tender and strong, like a newly tuned instrument that's still learning the room. In the quiet that followed, I understood the echo the hospital had left in me. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even relief exactly. It was a vow to know my name, to say it out loud when asked, to ask for other people's names in return, to notice the unlabeled doors and places where names matter, to be the voice that says, wait when the world rushes, and go when the path is clear. That night before sleep, I touched the ghost of the bracelet on my wrist. I saw the hallway again, the sign flickering, the door now named for what it does. I heard the mask's whisper turn into a breath, turn into a lullaby, turn into a room I could leave and return to as a story.
The hospital had forgotten my name for a moment, but I had not, and neither had the people who remembered for a living. So I slept, ordinary and miraculous, a person whose heart had found its one song, whose life had stepped back from the edge and onto the firm, lit path of a labeled morning. And somewhere, I hoped, in a room with shelves and a label maker, someone smiled, printed a small silver tag, and pressed it to a shy door so that the next wanderer would know, without guessing, where they were. Thank you for listening to Bedtime Life Stories. If this story brought you calm, comfort, or a soft mystery to drift on, consider following the channel and sharing it with someone who needs a peaceful night. Sleep well, and remember, the smallest weight can be the greatest kindness.